Hello and welcome, esteemed guests, to my channel. My name is Ainsley. Let's do stuff. Today we're back in Sulani doing a build in what is quasi the first part of my Let's Play. I've been thinking a lot about how I want to start the Let's Play, and I know sometimes the first part has a bit of an awkward explaining phase, so what I thought I would do is record the build for the house that I'll be setting my Let's Play in with my main character, as well as the create a sim where I make her, and talk a little bit about the setup. If you're not interested in my Let's Play, that's totally fine. You can just watch the build for what it is, just a little build speed build, and when it switches to the create a sim portion, you can of course stay for that as well if you'd like, or you can decide to opt out. That's no problem, no hurt feelings. The inspiration behind this build, I grew up in a very coastal area, not a tropical coastal area, but a sort of New Englandy coastal area. I'm from Canada, but it's the same general geography. So anytime I wanted to leave the little 100-person island where I grew up, I always drove by these fishing sheds down by the harbor, down by the wharf. They were little shacks owned by fishermen with very basic amenities, just so they had something to go to when they got off the boats if they didn't want to trek all the way home, which to me is a little hilarious. All the way home was like 3 minutes down the road. But I guess if you're out a long day of fishing, you're probably pretty exhausted when you get back. And they probably were built before anyone had cars, so it wasn't like a 3-minute car ride, it was more like a 15-20-minute walk. Though I'm also sure they were probably built so that the men could escape their wives, if I had to take a guess. But anyway, that's all a very long-winded way of saying that I wanted to build a fishing shack, kind of inspired by that, but set in Sulani. The main character for my Let's Play, her name is Jada Stevenson. She's originally from Strangerville, but her grandfather was from Sulani. When I was conceiving the idea for the Let's Play, I wanted to give the island a bit of a backstory as well, so I took a lot of inspiration from the history of places like Hawaii and American Samoa and Guam, very loosely anyway. It doesn't necessarily follow any particular backstory, but it is inspired by the idea that during a wartime, which I find it hysterical that since there is a military career now in the game, you have to kind of imagine that there are sim wars, and it gets really weird when you think about it too much. But basically, during the wartime, which would have been around when Jada's grandfather was a young man, 18 or 19, the military forces from Strangerville, which I kind of lumped together in the North America area as far as where different sim worlds are meant to correspond to which real life areas. So where Sulani is supposed to be sort of Polynesian inspired, my thought process is that the Strangerville military forces set up bases in Sulani so that they were able to be closer to whichever enemy force they were fighting. And Jada's grandfather actually ended up enlisting and fighting with the forces from Strangerville. And he actually fell in love with one of the nurses that was posted to the military base. So when the war was over, he followed her back to Strangerville and they got married and had a family, yada yada yada. Flash forward, here is Jada. Now, Jada's never actually been to Sulani. Her grandfather never even really ever went back. I'm gonna take a minute out of this story to talk about these lights, because I loved hanging these string lights down the sort of walkway area of the dock, because at least in the fishing shacks where I'm from, there's a little dock that kind of juts out over the water as well. So you can go right out of your little shack and fish just off the end of the wharf. You know, if it's late at night and you and your fishing buddies have had a few beer too many and you don't really want to get out on the boat, but you still want to catch yourself a little mackerel for supper. But back to the story portion anyway. So Jada's never been to Sulani. Her grandfather had never really gone back. I don't think that he was necessarily the most wealthy. I think that the war probably left a few scars on him, and I don't think he was ever in a position and never really moved up the ranks in a way that he earned much money. I think he kind of had a very modest life in Strangerville, which is really opposite to how Jada grew up, because her mother would have been her grandfather's daughter, but her father was, or is rather, he's still living. I haven't actually created him, and he's not really in the Let's Play, at least not at this point. I might go in and add her parents at a later point. But anyway, her father is a pretty high-ranking guy in the military, so she grew up really wealthy and had kind of everything she ever needed at her fingertips. And there's a certain expectation for her to, if not join the military, then at least do a career that is very well regarded and high performing. But actually her real passion lies in writing. She wants to be a best-selling author. And a lot of that is because of her grandfather. When she was growing up, he would tell her all of the folklore from the island, and he would tell her all of these stories about merfolk and about how he'd seen them when he was out fishing, and about all of the local legends about who, you know, the merfolk are and what they do to sailors, what they do to villagers, how they hide amongst the villagers and can walk on land. And of course, she doesn't necessarily believe him, but the passion with which he told those stories really left her captivated. So she decides that she wants to be a writer the way that her grandfather was such an exceptional storyteller. And her father was kind of always the first to write her grandfather off as, you know, kind of not the most stable, and don't listen to his foolish stories, Jada. He's a very, like, logical brained person who doesn't see the joy and the revelry in storytelling. He's more about the logic and the hard facts. So he always kind of looked down on Jada's grandfather a bit, and it kind of drove a wedge in the relationship between Jada and her father. I will probably add him later on and explore that relationship more. At least I'd like to, assuming this Let's Play all goes well and that people are enjoying it, because I think there's definitely meat to that story too. But that's not really the focus of this part of the Let's Play. What's happening right now is that Jada's grandfather has just passed away, and in his will he left Jada this old fishing shack in Sulani that people actually didn't even really know that he had. He never really mentioned it, but it's kind of a family shack. It's something he inherited from his father, and that, you know, he wanted to pass down to a worthy heir, which in his mind is Jada. And Jada has just finished university. She was in the city studying probably English, because I think at this point she's still trying to sell, oh well, maybe I'll be an English teacher or a professor, because that's a, you know, respectable career. But the more she thinks about joining the workforce and having to do this for a living, the less that she is enthused, and the more she has this sense of dread of, oh my god, this isn't what I want to do. And kind of another area she butts heads with her family. You can see I was using the new pride flags that we got in the update, which I'm like so excited about. It's awesome to have them as actual content in the game rather than custom content. But yeah, she kind of butts heads a little bit with her family, because her father is like totally a traditionalist, and he doesn't love the fact that she's a lesbian. It's not something they like talk about or actually have words about. It's more that you get the sense that, you know, it's an area that he's uncomfortable, and it makes her uncomfortable that he's uncomfortable, so it's never really talked about. But moving to Sulani, she'll quickly discover that that's not so taboo here, and there's a lot of acceptance for people whose sexuality, whose gender identity are different than the norm and the mainstream, and what would be acceptable to her father in his very traditionalist views. I don't always get super involved with townies when I'm doing Sims 4 gameplay, but I'm actually really looking forward to have Jada become friends with Leah, who is the transgender sim that came with the game with Island Living. I'll talk about it more once I actually get into gameplay and we actually get to play with Leah. But the way that Leah's customized gender settings are set up when you go in to create a sim, I think is open to kind of interpretation of exactly how Leah is trans. So in my game, I'm going to be playing them as gender fluid, and I'll probably swap a bit between mostly using the gender neutral they them, but also a bit of she her, a bit of he him, depending. So I'll talk about that more specifically when I get into that area of gameplay, but it's just something I thought I'd mention. And we've moved into into the screenshots here, so I hope you didn't mind me so much rambling over the build about the story more so than the build itself. I really enjoyed this strange LZ shape to furnish because it led to a very interesting layout. I didn't put a TV because I didn't think that a fishing shack from the quote-unquote 40s, 50s, depending on, what timeline you're looking at, if The Sims even has a timeline, but I doubted that it would have a modern TV, so I just put the couch and the bookshelf in, and who needs it when you are looking at views like this? And she's gonna spend most of her time writing anyway, and there's a meditation mat and a yoga mat out front, so it really is just a beautiful place. So we're about to move into Create a Sim now, so anyone who was just here for the build, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Be sure to leave a comment and a like down below if you enjoyed the build, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe. Until next time, get out there and do stuff, the whole drill. And to those of you staying for the Create a Sim and for a little more info on the Let's Play, thank you as well. So when I was creating Jada, her backstory makes her a quarter native Sulanian, so I wanted to strike a balance between some traditionally Sulanian features and more Simpian features. I don't know, it's hard to ascribe particular geographic regions to sim worlds, but I basically have. Has anybody else done that? Sulani is Polynesia, Selva Dorada is South America, kind of broadly, Strangerville is New Mexico, and then obviously Willow Creek and Oasis Springs and Newcrest are all supposed to be sort of American cities as well. Brindleton Bay is New England, Granite Falls is the Pacific Northwest, Forgotten Hollow is sort of Eastern Europe, where Windenburg is sort of a Germanic, Scandinavian, sort of England hybrid, and then San Myshuno is a sort of futuristic Pan-Asian city, which I imagine mostly is Korea, but there's a bit of Indian and Pakistani influence throughout it too. We're missing a good Middle Eastern world. I kind of have half a mind to redo Oasis Springs sometime as sort of a Dubai, Kuwait sort of place. But anyway, that was a big U-turn from what I'm actually supposed to be talking about, which is Jada. So in keeping with her Sulanian roots, I gave her curly hair as well as brown eyes. It's not the darkest brown for the eyes or the curls, but I do imagine that other than her grandfather, a lot of her family would have been very blonde Simpian. Here I go again with my own little made-up terms, but they would have been descendants from the Windenburg area, shall we say. In this Let's Play, I actually am using a lot of Maxis content. I don't usually. All of my Create a Sim videos on my channel are very alpha with the clothes and the hair, but I have been watching a lot of players who use either Maxis or Maxis Match, and it's not my cup of tea all the time, but especially with suntans and stuff, I really wanted to use the EA stuff, especially where they made so many curly hair types and so many outfits for the new pack that are meant to be traditionally Sulanian, so I really wanted to utilize that. Frustrating thing though, is anybody else's skin details and tattoos not linking between outfit categories? Because I had to go back and redo all of her skin details and all of her tattoos. Well, I say all of her tattoos, she has just the one back tattoo, but I had to redo them all for every outfit category. The only mod that I use is MC Command Center, and I have the updated version. Anyway, hopefully it'll be fixed eventually. The tattoo that I give her is the one that comes with Island Living. It's the tribal sort of tattoo that runs down your spine, and I gave her that because I thought that it was something that maybe she got when she first moved out of the house to go off to university to sort of honor her grandfather, because maybe it's something that he used to draw or doodle a lot for her when she was a kid, and he used to talk to her about it when he told his stories, so she wanted to have that tattoo to feel close to him and to feel close to her heritage. And I think especially for her it's important because she is so fair-skinned, and I specifically did that because I'm from an area where there are a lot of First Nations people, and a lot of kids that, I went to school with, they're very fair, like almost as pale, if not paler than me, and I'm about as pale as they come. So I kind of wanted to reflect that just because she's fairer doesn't mean she's any less in tune with her heritage or deserves to be less in tune with her heritage. And I think going back to the island, she's going to really learn more about where she's from and get more in touch with some of her history that I think living in Strangerville with her very strict traditionalist father, she hasn't had access to up to this point. But that does bring us to the end of the video, so give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, leave a comment, and do subscribe to my channel. Music, as always, was done by Chucky, linked to his SoundCloud below. Let me know in the comments if you're looking forward to this Let's Play, and until next time, get out there and do stuff!